Hey guys, tonight we're doing something different. You've survived bullets, you've dodged shells, but you probably won't survive this winter. Let's be honest, when you think of World War I, you picture mud and gas and barbed wire. But what if I told you that more soldiers feared January than they ever feared Jerry across no man's land? So before you settle in, go ahead and like the video, subscribe if you enjoy this kind of thing. I'm not going to guilt trip you with a trench whistle, and drop your city and local time in the comments. I love knowing who else is awake at these strange hours. Now, dim the lights, maybe grab a blanket, turn on a fan for that soft hum. Let's step together into the frozen hell of the Western Front. You wake up in a trench in northern France. It's November 1916, and your pillow is a sandbag that smells like mildew and rat urine. Your blanket is a wool coat so damp it feels like wearing a wet dog. And breakfast? Frozen bully beef that tastes like disappointment mixed with tin shavings. Your feet are numb. Not the pins and needles numb you get when your leg falls asleep during a boring Zoom meeting. This is the kind of numb where you genuinely can't remember if you still have toes. You wiggle them inside your boots. Maybe they move. Maybe they don't. The leather is soaked through, has been for 3 days straight, and this cold has turned your socks into icy mittens for your feet. The trench walls are coated in frost. Thick, white, crystalline frost that sparkles almost beautifully in the weak dawn light. If you weren't slowly dying, you might call it pretty. The duckboards under your boots are slick with ice, and every step is a gamble. One wrong move and you're face down in freezing mud that could swallow you whole. Here's a fact you didn't ask for. The winter of 1916 to 1917 was the coldest in living memory on the Western Front. Temperatures plunged to 9 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. That's cold enough to freeze your breath mid-exhale. Cold enough to turn your rifle into a useless ice sculpture if you didn't oil it obsessively. You glance down the trench line. Other men huddle in groups of 2 or 3, sharing body heat like emperor penguins. Nobody talks much. Talking requires energy, and energy is something you haven't had since October. The air smells of wood smoke, wet earth, and something sweet and rotten that you've learned not to think about too hard. Listen to the crunch of frost under your boots. Each step sounds like breaking glass. The wind cuts through the trench, a low, moaning sound that never really stops. It's the kind of wind that finds every gap in your clothing, every weak spot in your defences, and exploits it ruthlessly. Your hands are worse than your feet. You've wrapped them in strips of cloth, but your fingers are so stiff you can barely grip your rifle. You try flexing them. They move slowly, reluctantly, like frozen sausages. The cold makes everything harder. Loading a rifle, opening a tin of rations, even buttoning your coat becomes an ordeal that leaves you panting with effort. What you might not realise yet is that this cold is going to be with you for months. This isn't a bad weekend camping trip. This is your life now. From November through March, 4 solid months of frozen hell where the temperature is your constant enemy. A rat scurries past, fat and bold. It pauses, looks at you with beady eyes, then continues on its way. The rats don't seem bothered by the cold. They've got the whole trench system to themselves, warm nests built from stolen blankets and food everywhere. If reincarnation is real, you're coming back as a trench rat. You pull your coat tighter. It doesn't help. The cold seeps through wool, through skin, into your very bones. You've heard old men talk about feeling cold in their bones. Now you understand. It's not a metaphor. It's a literal ache that settles deep in your skeleton and refuses to leave. The sun rises slowly, a pale disk behind grey clouds. It offers no warmth, only light. You watch it climb and wonder if you'll see it set tonight. Not because of German bullets, but because frostbite and trenchfoot kill just as reliably, just slower and far less dramatically. Here's something fringe. Some soldiers claimed they could hear the cold. A high-pitched ringing in their ears that never stopped. Like tinnitus, but caused by extreme temperature. Medical officers dismissed it as shell shock, but men swore they heard winter itself singing to them. You stamp your feet, trying to force blood back into them. Thump, thump, thump against the frozen duckboards. Around you, others do the same. The trench becomes a symphony of stamping, coughing, and quiet misery. Welcome to the war nobody warns you about. The war against winter itself. The mud situation is complicated. During autumn, the trenches were liquid nightmares. You'd sink to your knees, sometimes your waist, in thick, sucking mud that swallowed men whole. Soldiers drowned in it, mules vanished into it. Entire artillery pieces were lost, swallowed by the earth like some biblical punishment. But then winter came and the mud froze. You'd think that would be better. Solid ground, right? Wrong. So very wrong. Frozen mud is like walking on a nightmare sculpture garden. It freezes in whatever shape it was in when the temperature dropped. That means peaks and valleys, sudden drops and sharp ridges, all hard as stone. You trip constantly. Twisted ankles are common, broken bones happen, and if you fall face first into a frozen mud ridge, you're going to chip a tooth or bloody your nose. The worst part is that this frozen landscape is covered in a thin layer of ice and fresh snow. So you can't see the obstacles, every step is a mystery. Will your boot land on solid ground or will it crash through a thin crust into liquid mud underneath? It's like playing Russian roulette with your ankles. Here's a historical fact. In January 2015, the Western Front experienced over 4.5 inches of rainfall in just 2 weeks. The trenches flooded, then froze, creating a landscape so treacherous that more men were injured from falls than from enemy snipers during some periods. You're walking the trench line now, trying to do your rounds. Your sergeant insists someone check the wire, make sure it hasn't been cut overnight. You volunteer because the standing still is worse than moving. At least motion generates heat, even if it's barely enough to notice. The trench walls have become vertical sheets of ice in places. You touch one experimentally. Your glove sticks to it. You pull back quickly, leaving a few threads of wool frozen to the wall like a bizarre art installation. Note to self, don't touch anything barehanded or you'll leave skin behind. Listen to the scrape of boots on ice, the occasional curse as someone loses their footing. There's a rhythm to trench life, even in winter. You learn to walk with your knees slightly bent, arms out for balance, like an elderly person navigating an icy parking lot. Dignity died somewhere around October. Now it's just survival. The duck boards, those wooden slats meant to keep you above the mud, have become skating rinks. Someone's tried to scatter dirt on them for traction, but it's frozen too, creating a surface somehow even more treacherous. You've seen 3 men go down already this morning, sliding like cartoon characters before crashing into trench walls or other soldiers. What they don't tell you in recruitment posters is that winter warfare is less about heroic charges and more about not breaking your own neck in your own trench. The enemy doesn't need to shoot you when gravity and ice are doing their job just fine. You reach a corner and peer around it carefully. The trench doglegs here, a design meant to contain blast damage from shells. In summer this was a flooded junction. Now it's a solid block of ice several feet thick. The only way past is to climb over it, which means exposing yourself above the trench line for a few seconds. Nobody wants to go first. You all stand there, 4 men, looking at this ice obstacle like it's a sleeping dragon. Finally, the youngest lad, probably 17 despite claiming 19, scrambles up and over. No shots ring out. The rest of you follow, one by one, boots slipping, hearts pounding. Here's a fringe tidbit. Some soldiers carved steps into frozen mud sections, creating semi-permanent staircases in trenches. These became valuable landmarks, named things like Devil's Ladder or Frostbite Steps. They'd last all winter, only to melt into mudslides come spring. When you drop back down on the other side, your hands are shaking. Not from fear of snipers, but from the exertion in this cold. Your breath comes in great white clouds. You lean against the trench wall, ice against your shoulder, and wonder how many more months of this you can take. Around you, the frozen landscape stretches in every direction. The barbed wire is coated in frost, looking like some perverse Christmas decoration. No Man's Land is a smooth white expanse, beautiful and deadly, hiding shell holes deep enough to lose a tank in. Scholars still debate whether frozen trenches were better or worse than muddy ones. Some argue the solid ground made movement easier. Others point to the increased injury rates and hypothermia deaths. You standing here with the frost forming on your eyelashes don't care about debates. You just know that mud and ice both suck, just in different ways. You continue your patrol, boots crunching, breath frosting, thinking about summer. You've almost forgotten what warm feels like. Was it real? Did you once walk around with every muscle clenched against cold? It seems like a dream now, distant and unbelievable. By late December, some sections of the trench line have transformed into something alien. Ice has built up on the walls, layer upon layer, until the trenches look less like defensive positions and more like glacial crevasses. You walk through corridors of ice, your breath echoing strangely in the enclosed spaces. The Germans, you've heard, built better trenches. They chose higher ground, dug deeper, installed better drainage. Their trenches have wooden floors, reinforced walls, even primitive heating systems in some dugouts. Meanwhile, you're in a British trench that floods if someone spits too enthusiastically. It's not fair, but fairness died somewhere around 1914, along with the idea that this war would be over by Christmas. Now it's 1916, nearly 1917, and you're still here, still cold, still fighting mud and ice and rats and Germans in roughly that order. Here's a verified fact. German trenches on the Western Front were often built on elevated positions with superior construction. They featured deep dugouts, sometimes 30 feet below ground, with bunks, stoves and lighting. British trenches, hastily dug during the race to the sea, were often built in the low-lying areas prone to flooding. You descend into a dugout, seeking brief refuge from the wind. The entrance is a sheet of ice you have to chop through with your entrenching tool. Inside, it's marginally warmer, maybe 40 degrees instead of 20. It feels like a sauna by comparison. 6 men are crammed in here, sitting on ammunition boxes, sharing a small brazier that gives off more smoke than heat. The walls are dirt, reinforced with timbers, and icicles hang from the ceiling like stalactites. One man is trying to melt snow in a tin cup over the brazier. It's taking forever, and the water, when it finally liquefies, tastes of smoke and metal. The smell down here is intense. Unwashed bodies, wet wool, smoke cordite, and something else. Something organic and disturbing. Nobody's bathed in months. Nobody's had clean clothes. You've all become walking biohazards, but at least you're warm walking biohazards. Listen to the drip of melting ice, the crackle of the inadequate fire, the coughs that never seem to stop. Everyone's sick. Colds, influenza, bronchitis, consumption. The diseases spread through the trenches faster than rumours, and rumours spread pretty damn fast. What you might not know is that these dugouts could be death traps. If a shell collapsed the entrance, you'd be buried alive. If the brazier wasn't properly vented, you'd die from carbon monoxide poisoning. Men fell asleep and never woke up. Not from enemy action, but from breathing their own toxic air. You settle onto a patch of dirt that's less frozen than the rest, pull your knees to your chest, and try to conserve heat. Your body has become efficient at this. Every calorie counts. Every movement is calculated. You're like a human battery, desperately trying not to discharge completely. The conversation, when it happens, is muted. Someone mentions home, someone else tells him to shut up. Talking about home makes it worse. Better to focus on the now, on getting through the next hour, the next watch, the next frozen night. Here's something historians still argue about. How many men died from cold versus combat in winter campaigns? Records are incomplete. Death certificates often listed exposure or pneumonia without context. Some estimates suggest that during the worst winter months, disease and cold-related deaths outnumbered combat casualties. A shell lands somewhere above, distant enough not to worry about, but close enough to rain frozen dirt down through the ceiling. Everyone tenses, then relaxes. Just another shell. Just another reminder that death comes in many forms here, and winter is one of the most patient. You close your eyes and imagine somewhere warm. A kitchen back home, fire crackling, soup simmering. The fantasy is so vivid you can almost smell it. Then you open your eyes and you're back in the frozen dugout, surrounded by ghosts who haven't died yet. The ice on the walls sparkles faintly in the brazier light. It's almost beautiful, this frozen hell you're living in. Almost. But beauty doesn't keep you warm. Beauty doesn't stop frostbite. Beauty is just another lie winter tells. You drift, lulled by the cold and exhaustion, thinking that maybe, just maybe, spring will come. And if it does, you'll appreciate every warm day for the rest of your life. If you survive that long. Your first task every morning isn't checking your rifle or inspecting the wire. It's finding something to drink. Water, that basic human necessity, becomes a luxury item in winter trenches. Everything is frozen. The canteens clipped to your belt are solid blocks of ice. The water barrels scattered along the trench line are frozen through. Even your spit freezes before it hits the ground. You've learned a trick though. Sleep with your canteen inside your coat pressed against your body. Your meagre body heat might keep it liquid. Might. It's a gamble. Some mornings you wake up with a canteen-shaped bruise on your ribs and frozen water. Anyway, Other mornings you wake up wet because the canteen leaked and now you're soaked with icy water that might give you hypothermia. It's like playing roulette, except all the outcomes are terrible and there's no prize for winning. Here's your morning routine. Wake up shivering, check if you can feel your feet, wiggle fingers. Successful wiggle means another day avoiding amputation. Retrieve canteen. If frozen, you've got options. You can try to thaw it over a tiny fire which takes forever and wastes fuel. You can smash the ice and suck on chunks, which gives you a headache and makes your teeth ache. Or you can trade for someone else's liquid water with cigarettes, chocolate, or other currency of the trenches. Listen to the sound of men attacking frozen water supplies all down the line. The clink of metal on ice. The frustrated curses. The occasional cheer when someone discovers a miraculous unfrozen pocket. It's a symphony of desperation played every dawn. The official water ration is supposed to be delivered daily. Supposed to be. In reality, getting water to frontline trenches in winter is a nightmare. The supply routes are iced over. The mules carrying water containers slip and break legs. The containers themselves freeze. By the time water reaches you, it's often unusable. Here's a fact that'll make you squirm. Soldiers sometimes resorted to melting snow for water. Sounds reasonable, right? Wrong. The snow on the Western Front was contaminated with everything you can imagine. Chemical residue from gas attacks, particles from decomposing bodies in no man's land, shrapnel fragments, bacteria. Drinking melted snow was a fast track to dysentery or worse. But you're desperate. You scoop snow into your mess tin, avoiding the yellow or brown patches, and hold it over a candle flame. It takes 10 minutes to melt enough snow for a single mouthful of water. The water tastes of metal and smoke and vague chemicals. You drink it anyway because dehydration kills faster than picky eating. What they don't teach you in training is that winter warfare is 40% logistics and 60% not dying from stupid preventable things. Bullets are almost an afterthought. The real enemies are frostbite, dehydration, disease, and the crushing monotony of suffering. You've finally got a half cup of questionable water. You drink it slowly, savouring each sip like it's expensive whiskey. Your throat, raw from breathing frozen air, appreciates the moisture. Your stomach, empty except for the frozen bully beef from last night, gurgles hopefully. Around you, other men are going through similar struggles. One soldier has managed to get a small fire going and is boiling water for the whole section. He's immediately popular. 10 men cluster around, offering their tins, their canteens, anything to get warm liquid. The smoke from the fire is a risk. German snipers watch for smoke. It tells them where you are, how many of you there might be, but the need for water overrides caution. You'll take your chances with snipers over dehydration any day. Here's a fringe detail. Some units developed elaborate water heating systems using recovered shell casings and salvaged pipe. These field-expedient devices could heat water without producing much smoke. The soldiers who built them were treated like celebrities, granted extra rations and lighter duties in exchange for maintaining the water supply. You get your turn at the fire. Your mess tin filled with dirty snow gradually liquefies. You watch it obsessively, afraid someone will knock it over or steal it. Water is power here. Water is life. Everything else is negotiable. When it's finally liquid and marginally warm, you drink greedily. It burns going down in the best way. You feel it hit your stomach, spreading warmth through your core. For 30 glorious seconds, you're almost comfortable. Then the wind picks up and you're cold again. But you've got water in you now. You've completed the first survival task of the day. Only about 1,000 more to go before you can sleep again. You look at the sky. Still grey. Still promising snow. The barometer in your bones tells you a storm is coming. Great. Just great. As if things weren't miserable enough, your rifle is your lifeline. It's been drilled into you since basic training. Clean your rifle, oil your rifle, love your rifle more than you love your mother. But nobody told you what happens when your rifle freezes solid and becomes about as useful as a fancy club. The Lee-Enfield rifle is a beautiful piece of engineering. 10 rounds, bolt action, accurate at long range. In summer conditions, it's reliable and deadly. In winter conditions, it's a temperamental princess that requires constant attention or it throws a lethal tantrum. You're inspecting your rifle now, the morning ritual that comes right after securing water. You pull the bolt back. It moves, but sluggishly fighting you. The oil you applied last night has thickened in the cold, turning into something closer to syrup. If you tried to fire right now, there's a real chance the bolt wouldn't cycle properly. Here's the dilemma. Oil prevents rust, but thick oil jams the mechanism. No oil means rust, which also jams the mechanism. You're damned either way, so you've got to find the sweet spot. Too much oil, frozen rifle. Too little oil, rusted rifle. Either way, dead you. The solution, according to the handbook, is to use less oil in winter. The reality is that you've got whatever oil they issued you, and it's not designed for 9 degrees below zero, so you improvise. Some men use their own body heat, sleeping with their rifles. You wake up with a rifle-shaped bruise on your side, but at least the bolt works. Listen to the sound of hundreds of men working bolts up and down the trench line. Click, click, clack, click, clack. It's the percussion section of the morning symphony. Everyone's testing their weapons, making sure they'll fire if needed. What's truly terrifying is discovering your rifle is frozen during combat. Imagine German troops coming across no man's land and you pull the trigger and nothing happens. You work the bolt and it won't move. You're standing there with an expensive club while men with functioning weapons are 30 yards away and closing. It happened. Historical records document instances where entire units had frozen weapons during winter assaults. The casualty rates were catastrophic. Men were overrun not because they were cowards or poor shots, but because their rifles had become ice sculptures. Here's a verified fact. During the winter of 1914 to 1915, British ordnance officers recorded thousands of complaints about rifle malfunctions due to cold. The standard issue oil froze at temperatures below 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Solutions ranged from using different lubricants to instructing soldiers to keep weapons inside their coats. You field strip your rifle, working quickly before your fingers get too numb. The parts come apart reluctantly. You wipe each piece with a rag, removing old oil, checking for ice buildup. There's frost in the barrel. You blow through it, your warm breath melting the ice, creating condensation that'll freeze again in 10 minutes. It's futile, but you do it anyway because the alternative is dying with a jammed weapon. The ammunition is another problem. The clips are metal. Metal conducts cold. The rounds themselves can freeze, especially if they've gotten wet, which everything always is because the trenches leak like sieves. You've heard stories of frozen rounds exploding in chambers, destroying rifles and faces. You check your ammunition pouches. The rounds are cold enough to burn your skin if you touch them bare-handed. You shake each clip, listening for rattling that might indicate ice. They seem okay, but seem isn't good enough when your life depends on it. What soldiers figured out through trial and error was that keeping ammunition dry mattered more than keeping it warm. A frozen but dry round would usually fire. A wet round, even if not fully frozen, could fail. So you've wrapped your ammunition in wax cloth, stored it inside your coat, checked it obsessively every hour. You're basically a mobile armory, and every piece requires constant maintenance. It's exhausting. Some men give up, let their rifles rust, figure they'll take their chances. Those men don't last long. Either German bullets get them, or their officers charge them with the neglect of equipment. Here's something that's darkly funny if you have trench humour. The Vickers machine guns, those beautiful death dealers that can mow down waves of infantry, they freeze too. But their problem isn't oil, it's the water cooling jacket. The water freezes, the gun overheats and jams. The solution? Soldiers pee into the cooling jacket to keep it liquid. Yes, you read that right. Machine gunners, in the heat of battle, would urinate into their weapons to keep them functional. The urine stays liquid longer than water because of the salt and urea. It's disgusting, it smells horrific, but it works. You reassemble your rifle, each piece clicking into place. You work the bolt. Smooth. Better. You dry fire it. Checking the trigger pull. Good. The rifle is combat ready for maybe the next 3 hours before you'll need to do this all over again. You look down the trench line. Every man is doing the same thing. Cleaning, oiling, checking, testing is the price of survival. Your rifle is your best friend, your life insurance, and your worst responsibility all rolled into one. The snow starts falling again. Soft, gentle flakes that would be beautiful anywhere else. Here, there are just another threat. They'll land on your rifle, melt from residual heat, then freeze. More ice, more problems. You tuck the rifle inside your coat and hope for the best. Let's talk about your feet. No, seriously, we need to talk about your feet because they're about to become your worst enemy and your greatest concern. You've been wearing the same boots for 6 weeks. They're leather, which was probably good quality back in 1914, but it's 1916 now and they've been through hell. The leather is cracked, the seams are splitting, and they're about as waterproof as a colander. Your socks are wool, or they were wool. Now they're more like felted mats of compressed fibre, sweat and questionable substances. You last changed them. You can't remember. 2 weeks ago, 3, time blurs in the trenches, especially winter trenches where every day is the same frozen nightmare. Here's what's happening in your boots right now. Your feet are wet. They've been wet since November. The moisture comes from everywhere. Standing water in trenches, snow melting against your body heat, sweat from your own feet that has nowhere to evaporate to. This constant wetness is dissolving your skin. Not metaphorically, literally dissolving it. Trench foot is the medical term, but that sanitizes what's really happening. Your skin is dying. The prolonged exposure to cold and wet causes blood vessels to constrict, cutting off circulation. Without circulation, tissue dies. Slowly, painfully, turning your feet into rotting flesh while they're still attached to your body. You haven't looked at your feet in 3 days. You're afraid to. The smell is bad enough. A sweet, rotten odour that reminds you of garbage left in summer heat. Except it's winter, and the smell is coming from your own body. Listen to men hobbling along the duckboards. Notice how almost everyone limps now. That's not from wounds. That's trench foot taking its toll. Every step is agony, like walking on broken glass mixed with hot coals, except your feet are also numb so you feel everything and nothing simultaneously. Here's a historical fact that should horrify you. During World War I, over 75,000 British soldiers were treated for trench foot. 20,000 cases were in the winter, of 1914 to 1915 alone. Some men had to have toes amputated, some lost entire feet, some died from gangrene that spread up their legs. Your sergeant is obsessed with feet. He conducts foot inspections every morning like he's checking the crown jewels. You know why. If too many men go down with trench foot, it's his head. Officers have been court-martialed for poor foot hygiene in their units, so every morning there's the ritual. Remove your boots, inspect your feet, change your socks if you have dry ones, which you don't. Massage your feet to restore circulation. Put boots back on. It sounds simple, it's torture. You sit on a fire step and lace your boots. They're frozen stiff, the lace is more like wire than fabric. It takes 5 minutes of fumbling with numb fingers to get them undone. You pull the first boot off. The smell hits you like a physical slap. Other men nearby turn away, cursing. Your sock is black with mud and something else. The wool has fused to your skin in places. You peel it off carefully, whimpering as it takes skin with it. Your foot is white, not healthy white, dead white. The skin is wrinkled like you've been in a bath for hours, except pruny bath skin is pink and warm. This is corpse white and the corpse cold. There are red patches that might be the beginning of rot. There are blisters filled with clear fluid. One has burst, leaving raw flesh exposed. What you're seeing is the early stage of trench foot. Catch it now, treat it aggressively, and you might keep your foot. Ignore it and you're looking at amputation by February. The treatment is simple in theory: dry your feet, keep them warm, change socks regularly. In practice, you have no dry socks, no heat source, and you're standing in 3 inches of icy water for 6 hours at a stretch. You do what you can. You massage your foot, working from toes to ankle, trying to force blood back into the tissue. It hurts. It hurts so much you're biting your lip to keep from crying out. But you do it because the alternative is losing your foot to a sore in some field hospital. Here's something that showcases how desperate things got. Some soldiers rubbed whale oil on their feet. Whale oil. Like 19th century whalers. The military issued it because it created a waterproof barrier. It smelled terrible, attracted rats, and made your feet feel like greased sausages, but it helped, slightly. You've got a small tin of the stuff. You apply it liberally, coating every inch of your foot. The oil is semi-solid in this cold, and rubbing it in is like spreading frozen butter. Your feet now smell like dead fish mixed with your existing rot smell. Lovely. You have 1 pair of supposedly dry socks. They are not dry, they're just less wet than your other socks. You put them on, cringing as the damp wool touches your raw skin. Then the boots. Getting frozen boots back on swollen feet is an ordeal. You have to force them, pulling and pushing, until finally your foot slides in. You lace up and stand. The pain is immediate and comprehensive. Your feet scream in protest, but you stand anyway because lying down is giving up and you're not ready to give up yet. You look around. Every man is going through the same ritual. Some have it worse than you. You see feet that are blackened with gangrene. You see toes that are clearly dead, hanging on by threads of rotting flesh. You see men crying silently as they try to work circulation back into dying tissue. The medical officer walks the line, inspecting. He stops at one soldier, takes one look at his feet and tags him for evacuation. The soldier looks relieved. He's going to lose those feet, probably both of them, but at least he's getting out of the trenches. You hide your feet when the MO approaches. You're not ready to leave yet. You can handle this. You can manage the pain. It's fine. Everything's fine. The MO passes you by. You've dodged evacuation for another day. You're not sure if you're relieved or disappointed. Your watch is 4 hours. 4 hours standing in one position, staring across no man's land, watching for movement that never comes. In summer, 4 hours is tedious. In winter, 4 hours is a slow-motion execution. You're at your post now, standing on the fire step, rifle propped against the parapet, trying not to think about your feet. The water in the bottom of the trench has frozen into a sheet of ice half an inch thick. Standing on it is like standing on a frozen lake. Every few minutes you shift your weight trying to keep blood flowing. The temperature is maybe 15 degrees Fahrenheit. With the wind chill, it feels like 5 below. The wind comes across no man's land like it's been sharpened specifically to cut through British wool uniforms. You're wearing every piece of clothing you own. Undershirt, shirt, tunic, greatcoat. 2 pairs of socks, gloves with the fingers cut off so you can operate your rifle. A scarf wrapped around your neck and lower face. A balaclava under your helmet. You're dressed like an Arctic explorer, and you're still freezing. Here's the math of cold weather survival. Your body generates heat. The cold steals it. If you generate more than the cold steals, you live. If the cold steals more than you generate, you die. It's a constant calculation, an equation written in shivers and numbness. Listen to the wind, it never stops. It's a low moan that rises and falls, sometimes shrieking when it hits the wire, sometimes dropping to a whisper. It sounds alive, like winter itself is breathing down your neck. What happens during a 4-hour watch in freezing conditions is fascinating in a terrible way. Your body goes through stages, trying desperately to maintain core temperature. Stage 1, you're cold but functional, you shiver. Shivering is good. It's your body's furnace kicking on, burning calories to generate heat. You can still think clearly, still watch your sector, still react if something happens. Stage 2, the shivering, intensifies. Your teeth chatter so hard you worry about cracking them. Your muscles are burning through energy fast and you haven't eaten enough to sustain this. You're getting colder despite the shivering. Stage 3, the shivering stops. This is bad. This is your body admitting defeat. You're entering hypothermia now. Your core temperature is dropping. Your brain is getting sluggish. You're making mistakes, losing coordination. Stage 4, you don't care anymore. Hypothermia has a cruel trick. As you get colder, you start feeling warm. You might take off your coat, you might lie down in the snow, and then you die. Comfortable and stupid. Here's a verified fact. Hypothermia was a constant threat during winter trench warfare. Men on watch would be found unconscious, frozen to their positions. Some died without ever being shot at. The British Army instituted regulations requiring more frequent watch rotations and mandatory movement exercises to prevent hypothermia deaths. You're in stage 2 now. You've been standing here for 90 minutes and you're shivering so hard your rifle is vibrating against the parapet. You need to move. You stamp your feet, carefully, trying not to slip on the ice. Thump, thump, thump. It helps, marginally. You swing your arms, beating them against your sides like you're trying to fly. Blood flows back into your fingers, bringing painful tingles. You wiggle your toes inside your boots. You can feel 3 of them. The other 7 are question marks. The man to your left is having a worse time. He's not moving anymore, just standing there, staring. You nudge him. Oi! You're right. He doesn't respond immediately. Then slowly he turns to look at you. His eyes are unfocused. "I'm fine," he mumbles. "Just tired." He's hypothermic. You've seen it before. You grab him, shake him, force him to move. "Walk it off, mate. Come on, move your feet." He resists, wants to just stand there, but you're insistent. You make him march in place, make him swing his arms. After a few minutes, the clarity returns to his eyes. He nods thanks and goes back to watching his sector, moving now, understanding that stillness is death. What you're doing is saving his life. In 6 hours he'll do the same for you when you start to fade. That's how this works. You watch each other's backs, not just for Germans, but for winter itself. Here's a fringe detail. Some units tied ropes between men on watch. If one soldier stopped moving, the rope would go slack, alerting others. It was a primitive early warning system against hypothermia. Simple but effective. More than one life was saved by a slack rope. You check your watch, 90 minutes left. You can do this. You've done it before, you'll do it again. The secret is to never stop moving. Shift weight foot to foot. Flex fingers. Roll shoulders. Stay in motion. Stay alive. The snow falls heavier now, reducing visibility to maybe 20 yards. You can barely see the wire. No man's land is a white void. The Germans could be forming up for an attack right now, and you wouldn't know until they were on top of you. But you're not worried about Germans. You're worried about your feet, which have gone completely numb. You're worried about your hands, which are so cold you're not sure you could pull the trigger if you had to. You're worried about making it through the next 90 minutes without becoming a casualty to nothing more dramatic than cold air. You think about summer, about heat, about sweating, about complaining that it was too hot. You'd kill for too hot right now, you'd commit war crimes for a sunny beach and warm sand. But that's fantasy. Reality is frozen mud, biting wind, and 90 more minutes of this frozen hell before someone relieves you, and you can stumble back to a dugout that's marginally less freezing. You settle in for the long haul, moving constantly, watching the white void, surviving 1 minute at a time. 3 days later, you know something is seriously wrong. Your right foot has stopped hurting. That should be good news. It's not. Pain means nerve function. Pain means living tissue. When the pain stops, it means the nerves have died. And if the nerves are dead, the flesh they serve is dying too. You're in the dugout now, morning foot inspection time. You've been dreading this. You unlace your boot with shaking hands. Please be okay, please be okay. The boot comes off. Your sock is stuck to your foot, frozen in place by a combination of blood, pus and tissue fluid. You have to pour warm water over it to get it to release. When it finally peels away, you see the damage. 3 toes on your right foot are black. Not dark red, not bruised purple. Black. The colour of dead meat. The colour of gangrene. Your stomach lurches. You're looking at parts of your body that are already dead, just waiting for the rest of you to figure it out. Here's what happened. The tissue froze. The blood vessels closed down, trying to preserve core temperature. Without blood flow, cells died. Bacteria moved in, anaerobic species that thrive in dead tissue. Gangrene set in. Now you're in a race between medical intervention and systemic infection. The smell is overwhelming. Sweet rot like fruit gone bad mixed with something chemical and wrong. Other men turn away gagging. Even in a trench where everything smells terrible, this is noticeably awful. You know what comes next. You've seen it happen to others. You'll be sent to the medical officer. He'll take one look, shake his head and tag you for evacuation. You'll go to a field hospital. A surgeon will remove the dead toes, possibly more if the gangrene has spread. If you're lucky, that's all you lose. If you're unlucky, they take the foot. Or the leg. What's darkly ironic is that losing toes might save your life. You'll be sent to England to recover. Weeks, maybe months away from the front. Away from the trenches, the cold, the constant threat of death. Your war might be over. Part of you is relieved. Part of you feels guilty. Men are dying here and you're escaping with a medical discharge because you couldn't keep your feet dry. Listen to the silence in the dugout. Everyone's seen your foot. Nobody knows what to say. This could happen to any of them. This will happen to some of them. Trenchfoot doesn't discriminate. Here's a historical fact. Trenchfoot was such a serious problem that the British Army made it a court-martial offence for officers if their men developed it. The reasoning was that proper foot hygiene could prevent it, so cases of trenchfoot represented negligence. This was deeply unfair, as preventing trenchfoot in flooded winter trenches was often impossible. But the army needed someone to blame. Your sergeant appears. He takes one look at your foot and nods grimly. Right then, MO's dugout. Now! You try to stand. Your blackened toes bend at unnatural angles, feeling like they're made of rubber and twigs. You fall. 2 men catch you, support you. They help you hop toward the medical officer's station, one foot touching down, one foot held gingerly off the ground. The medical officer is a tired-looking captain with hollow eyes and hands that smell of carbolic acid. He examines your foot without expression. He's seen hundreds just like it. "When did the discoloration start?" he asks. 2 days ago, you lie. It was at least 4 days, but you had hoped it would get better. He doesn't call you on it. He's too tired to care. Right. Gangrene. You're for the casualty clearing station. They'll decide how much to take. Just like that, your war is probably over. A tag goes on your uniform. You're helped to a stretcher. Other wounded men are being loaded onto a cart. You're going to join them. As the cart pulls away, you look back at the trench line. Men you've served with for months are watching. Some wave, some look envious. All of them know they might be next. Here's something medical historians still study. The psychological impact of preventable injuries like trench foot often exceeded the physical trauma. Soldiers felt they'd failed, that they should have done more to prevent it. This guilt, combined with the physical disability, led to high rates of depression and suicidal ideation among trench foot survivors. The cart jostles over the frozen ground. Each bump sends pain shooting up your leg. Your 3 dead toes flop around, disconnected from sensation, alien things attached to your body. You're leaving the trenches. You're going somewhere warm and dry with real beds and nurses and food that isn't frozen. You should be happy, but all you feel is empty, and your foot smells like death. Fire is life. Fire is also a death sentence if you're not careful. The paradox of winter trench warfare is that you desperately need heat, but showing any sign of heat will get you killed. German snipers watch for smoke. Their artillery observers watch for the glow of fires. Show them either, and shells will rain down on your position within minutes, but without fire you'll freeze to death. So you learn to cheat death by making the smallest, most covert fires humanity has ever produced. You're huddled in a funk hole right now. That's military slang for a tiny alcove dug into the trench wall, barely big enough for 2 men. It's marginally sheltered from wind and mostly hidden from German observation. This is where you're going to attempt the impossible, getting warm. Your fuel is a combination of things that would horrify any fire safety expert. You've got wooden ammunition crate fragments, charcoal scrounged from God knows where, a few lumps of coal, and some cotton uniform scraps soaked in oil. It's a fire hazard, and a smoke grenade waiting to happen. The trick is burning hot and fast with minimal smoke. You build a tiny structure, no bigger than your fist, in a mess tin. The tin will contain the light and concentrate the heat. You layer your materials carefully. Oil-soaked cloth at the bottom, splinters of wood arranged in a teepee, larger pieces on top, tiny coal chunks at the very top. Here's where it gets technical. You need airflow but not wind. Too much air and your fire blazes bright, announcing your position. Too little and it smoulders, producing smoke without heat. You create a wind block using sandbags, leaving just enough gap for oxygen. 1 match. You've only got a few left, and matches are more valuable than bullets right now. The match flares. You touch it to the oil-soaked cloth. It catches immediately. Listen to the soft crackle as the fire takes hold. It sounds like tiny voices whispering secrets. The flames are small, barely visible, contained within the mess tin. The heat is immediate and glorious. You hold your hands over the tiny flame. The warmth feels like a miracle. Your fingers, numb for hours, begin to tingle painfully as circulation returns. You want to weep from the simple joy of being warm. What you're doing is technically against regulations. Unauthorized fires are forbidden in frontline trenches, but regulations were written by officers in warm dugouts who've never had their fingers turn black from frostbite. The men in the trenches have a different set of priorities. Here's a verified fact. Soldiers developed elaborate systems for concealed heating. Some dug specialized warming holes deep into trench walls with chimney systems that disperse smoke. Others used metal cans with perforated sides to create miniature stoves that burned almost smoke-free. The ingenuity born from desperation was remarkable. Your fire is burning well now, giving off impressive heat for its size. You've got maybe 10 minutes before the fuel is exhausted. 10 minutes of warmth. You're going to savour every second. Your companion in the funk hole, a lad from Manchester whose name you can never remember, holds a tin of water over the flames. The water begins to steam. He adds tea leaves, precious tea leaves saved from his ration. In 5 minutes, you'll have hot tea. Hot tea. It sounds so simple, so mundane. Back home, you made tea every day without thinking. Kettle on the stove, leaves in the pot, milk and sugar to taste. Easy. Here, making tea is an achievement worthy of medals. You've sourced fuel, built a concealed fire, heated water, and you're about to have a hot beverage. You feel like a Victorian explorer conquering the Arctic. The tea steeps, the smell of it, combined with the warmth from the fire, creates a bubble of civilization in this frozen hell. For a few minutes, you're not a soldier in a trench. You're a human being having tea. What soldiers discovered was that these small comforts mattered more than grand gestures. A hot drink, a warm fire, a dry sock. These tiny victories against the cold kept men sane when everything else was trying to drive them mad. The Manchester lad pours tea into 2 cups. Real cups. Not mess tins, carefully hoarded from a destroyed farmhouse. He hands you one. You wrap your hands around it, feeling the heat seep through the ceramic. You sip. It's the most delicious thing you've ever tasted. It's hot, strong and real. It makes you feel human again. Here's a fringe detail. Some soldiers carried small pocket stoves, devices no bigger than a cigarette case that could burn the solid fuel tablets. These were technically issued to officers, but found their way into the ranks through trading and theft. A soldier with a pocket stove was more valuable than a soldier with good aim. Your fire is dying now. The fuel is almost gone. You've had your 10 minutes of warmth, your cup of tea. Now it's time to extinguish everything, hide the evidence, and go back to freezing. You pour water over the embers. They hiss and die. You scatter the ashes, bury the charred mess tin, make it look like nothing happened here. If an officer finds evidence of unauthorized fires, you'll be on charges. But you're warm. Well, warmer. Your hands work, your insides are heated by tea. You've bought yourself maybe an hour of functional comfort before the cold reclaims you. You emerge from the funk hole back into the trench. The cold hits you like a physical blow after your brief respite. But you're smiling. You beat winter for 10 minutes. You'll take that victory. Let's discuss your menu. Actually, let's not call it a menu. That implies choice and variety. You have rations. They are the same every day. They're all frozen. Bully beef. That's your primary protein. It's corned beef in a tin, invented to feed armies in the field, designed to last forever without refrigeration. In summer, it's unappetizing but edible. In winter, it's a solid block of meat-flavored ice that could double as a weapon. You're holding a tin of it now. The label promises beef. The contents look more like industrial lubricant that's been frozen and cut into chunks. You pry the lid open with your knife. The beef doesn't move. It's frozen solid in the tin. Your options: eat it frozen, which will give you a stomachache and possibly crack a tooth. Try to thaw it, which requires heat you don't have. Or trade it for something else, which nobody wants because they're all in the same situation. You decide to try thawing it against your body. You tuck the tin inside your coat against your chest. Your body heat might, over the course of an hour or two, soften it enough to eat. In the meantime, you've got hardtack. These are biscuits that could survive a nuclear war. They're flour, water and salt baked into discs so hard they're classified as potential dental hazards. In normal conditions, you're supposed to soak them in tea or coffee to soften them. In winter conditions, they're frozen, which somehow makes them even harder. You're not sure how that's possible, but here we are. Listen to the sound of men attempting to eat hardtack. Crunch, crack, curse. Someone's just broken a tooth. Someone else is trying to gnaw at the edge like a beaver. It's undignified and necessary. Here's the technique you've learned. Don't bite directly. Instead, suck on the hardtack, letting saliva and warmth gradually soften it. You'll look ridiculous, sitting in a frozen trench sucking on a biscuit like an infant, but your teeth will survive. What's in these biscuits is a mystery. The label says they're nutritious. The reality is they're mainly calories, providing energy without much in the way of vitamins or minerals. Eat nothing but hardtack for long enough and you'll develop scurvy. But calories keep you alive, so you eat them anyway. Here's a historical fact. The hardtack issued to British troops in WWE was often left over from earlier conflicts. Some tins were stamped with dates from the Boer War, or even earlier. The military justified this by pointing out that hardtack doesn't spoil. Technically true. Also technically irrelevant when you're trying to eat a biscuit older than you are. You've also got jam, plum and apple jam in a tin. It's supposed to provide sweetness and energy. In winter, it's frozen solid. You can't spread frozen jam, you can't even scoop it. It's a jam-shaped popsicle that tastes vaguely of fruit. Some men eat it frozen, chipping off chunks and sucking on them like candy. Others try to thaw it, with limited success. You've got a spoonful in your mouth right now, letting your body heat slowly melt it. It tastes like sweet ice with fruit undertones. Your meal today: frozen meat, rock-hard biscuits, and fruit-flavoured ice. You're living like a Victorian polar explorer, except you're only 50 miles from Paris. What you wouldn't give for hot food. Real hot food. Stew, soup, anything that's warm and soft. The field kitchens are supposed to send up hot meals, but getting them to the front line in winter is nearly impossible. By the time food travels from kitchen to trench, it's frozen. The soup becomes slush, the stew becomes solid. Some units have started burying containers of hot food in insulated boxes, filled with straw. It helps sometimes. Other times you dig up your dinner and find it's frozen anyway. Here's something that shows the desperation. Soldiers would eat anything that provided calories. Lard straight from the tin. Sugar mixed with water. Condensed milk frozen into sweet chunks. If it had calories, it went in your mouth no matter how unappetizing. Your bully beef has softened slightly. You extract the tin from your coat. The beef is now semi-solid, like a very firm pâté. Progress. You scoop some out with your knife and eat it. It tastes of salt, metal, and vague beef flavors. It's not good. It's barely food, but it's protein and calories, and your body needs both desperately. You wash it down with water from your canteen. The water has a metallic taste from the canteen and a chemical taste from the purification tablets. Nothing tastes clean or pure here. Everything has a flavor of war. Mealtime in the trenches isn't about enjoyment, it's about survival. You're fueling your body, maintaining your ability to function. The fact that food tastes terrible and is frozen solid is irrelevant. You eat because not eating means dying. You finish your meal and immediately start thinking about the next one. When's the next ration distribution? How much do you have left? Can you scrounge extra from someone else? Food has become an obsession. You think about it constantly. Not gourmet food or delicious meals, just food, calories, energy, the stuff that keeps your heart beating and your feet moving. Welcome to cuisine on the Western Front. Michelin wouldn't give it any stars, but it keeps you alive, and that's all that matters. Sleep is a luxury you can't afford but desperately need. Your body is burning through energy at an incredible rate, fighting cold, stress, and exhaustion. You need 8 hours minimum to recover. You'll get maybe 4 in 30-minute increments while freezing. You're trying to sleep now. Trying is the operative word. You're in a dugout, crammed with 8 other men, lying on a bed made of straw that's more ice than straw. Your blanket is a wool greatcoat that's damp and smells of mildew and previous owners. The temperature in here is maybe 35 degrees. That's warmer than outside, where it's 20, but it's still well below comfortable. Your body is shivering, which makes sleep difficult. Shivering is involuntary muscle movement, and it's loud and disruptive. Listen to the dugout. 8 men, all shivering, all shifting position constantly, all trying and failing to get comfortable. It sounds like a room full of people having seizures. Teeth chattering, bodies twitching, occasional groans of discomfort. What makes sleep harder is that you can't fully warm up, BC. If you fall into deep sleep, your metabolism slows, body temperature drops, and hypothermia becomes a real risk. So your body won't let you sleep deeply. It keeps you in light sleep, constantly almost waking, never quite resting. Here's the cycle. You close your eyes, you start to drift. The cold intensifies as your body relaxes. You shiver violently, which wakes you up. You pull your coat tighter. You try again, repeat endlessly. You manage maybe 20 minutes of actual sleep before something wakes you. This time it's rats. They're running across the men sleeping below you, squeaking and fighting over scraps of food. The rats are huge, not city rat size. These are trench rats, fed on unlimited food sources we don't talk about. They are the size of cats, bold as lions, and completely unafraid of humans. One runs across your chest. You swat at it. It squeaks indignantly and scurries off. You will not sleep now. Once you're aware of rats, you can't ignore them. You feel every movement in the straw, every rustle could be vermin. Here's a fact that will ensure you never sleep again. Estimates suggest that millions of rats inhabited the trench systems of the Western Front. They bred rapidly, had ample food, and no natural predators. Some soldiers claimed the rats would watch them, waiting for them to die so they could feed. You're wide awake now, lying in frozen straw, listening to rats scurry and men snore. Sleep is impossible. You should give up and accept it, but exhaustion makes you stubborn. You're going to sleep if it kills you, which it might, given the hypothermia risk. You try a different position. On your side, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around yourself. This conserves heat better, but puts pressure on your hip bone against the hard ground. Within 5 minutes, your hip is aching. You shift to your other side. Now that hip hurts. What you're learning is that the human body wasn't designed for this. We're tropical apes, evolved for warm climates. Sleeping on frozen ground in freezing temperatures is so far outside our biological design that your body is actively fighting you. Some men have given up on sleep entirely. They have embraced exhaustion, entering a zombie-like state where they function on pure autopilot. They can walk, shoot, follow orders, but they're not really conscious. They're sleepwalking through the war. Here's something medical officers noted. Chronic sleep deprivation combined with cold stress created symptoms indistinguishable from mental illness. Hallucinations, paranoia, emotional outbursts. Many soldiers were diagnosed with shell shock when what they really had was exhaustion and hypothermia. You finally drift off. The sleep is thin and unsatisfying, full of weird dreams about warmth. You dream you're in a bath, hot water, steam rising. Then you wake up and you're still in the frozen dugout and you want to cry from the disappointment. A shell lands somewhere nearby, not close enough to be dangerous, but close enough to vibrate the ground. Everyone jerks awake. There's a moment of confused panic before you all remember where you are. Nobody goes back to sleep. The spell is broken. You lie there in the dark, listening to your own breathing, counting the hours until dawn. Sleep is supposed to be restorative. Here, it's just another battle you're losing. You'll function on whatever scraps of rest you can steal, and you'll pay for it with slowed reflexes, impaired judgment, and a constant fog of exhaustion. But you'll survive. You'll get through the night like you've gotten through every night before. And tomorrow night, you'll try again, chasing sleep that never quite comes in a frozen hell that never quite ends. Humans are creatures of habit. Even in hell, especially in hell, we create rituals. Little ceremonies that give structure to chaos. In the winter trenches, these rituals become lifelines to sanity. Your morning ritual is sacred. Wake up. Check if you can feel all your extremities. Count your fingers and toes, mentally tallying the ones that still have sensation. Wiggle everything that can wiggle. If it moves, it's probably still alive. Then comes the coat check. Is your coat still mostly dry? Has it frozen overnight? You shake it, feeling for ice crystals. Some mornings, your coat is so frozen it stands up on its own. You have to work it, bend it, beat it until it's flexible enough to wear. Here's what you do next, and this is going to sound insane, but it works. You talk to your feet, out loud. You tell them, right lads, another day, we're going to make it, just hang on a bit longer. Do your feet respond? No, obviously not, but the act of acknowledging them, of making their survival a team effort, helps psychologically. You're not suffering alone, you and your feet are suffering together. Listen to the dugout in the morning. Men talking to their feet, their hands, their rifles. Come on, you bastard, don't freeze on me today. It's a chorus of insanity that's actually functional sanity. What you've created is agency in a situation where you have none. You can't control the war. You can't control the weather. But you can control your morning ritual, and that tiny bit of control is everything. Here's a historical note. Psychologists studying WE veterans noted that those who maintained personal rituals had better long-term mental health outcomes. The rituals provided structure, purpose, and a sense of control. They were primitive coping mechanisms, but they worked. Your next ritual is weapon inspection. You've done this every day for months. Clean the bolt, check the barrel, oil the mechanism. It's muscle memory now. You could do it blindfolded, which is good, because some mornings it's so dark you practically are blindfolded. The ritual is meditative. Clean, check, oil, repeat. Your mind goes quiet. For 10 minutes there's only the rifle, the cloth, the oil. Nothing else exists. It's the closest you get to peace. Then there's the mail ritual. Every day you check if there's mail. Most days there isn't. The mail service to frontline trenches in winter is sporadic at best, but you check anyway, because the one day you don't check will be the day your letter arrives. When mail does come, you don't read it immediately. You save it, You put it inside your coat against your heart and you carry it through the day. Knowing you have a letter unread is somehow better than reading it. It's potential happiness, future comfort. Finally, in the evening when you're in your dugout, you'll take out the letter and read it by candlelight, slowly, savouring every word. Your mother writes about the weather, about the neighbours, about absolutely nothing important. It's the most important thing you've ever read. Here's something soldiers did that seems macabre but made sense to them. They'd write letters to be sent in case of their death. They'd update these letters regularly, adding new thoughts, new messages. It was a ritual that acknowledged death, while also creating something that would outlive them. You've got such a letter in your pocket right now. It's addressed to your mother. You update it once a week, adding lines like, "Still here, still fighting, still thinking of you." You hope it never gets sent. But having written it makes death less frightening somehow. Your final daily ritual is the count. Before sleep, you count your blessings. This sounds ridiculous. What blessings could you possibly have in a frozen trench? But you find them. You're alive. That's 1, your feet are still attached. That's 2, you ate today. 3, you have ammunition and it's dry. 4, you can count to 10 on good days. The counting forces you to find positives. It rewrites your brain's tendency to focus on suffering. You're teaching yourself gratitude in hell, and it might be the only thing keeping you from eating your own rifle. These rituals are weird, personal, and absolutely essential. They're the scaffolding that holds your mind together when everything else is falling apart. You've survived German bullets, German shells, German gas. You've survived trench foot, frostbite, and hypothermia. Now you're going to face something that doesn't care about trenches or tactics. Influenza. It's January 17, and someone in your section is coughing. It's not the normal smoker's cough that everyone has. This is deeper, wetter, more persistent. The man, a corporal from Leeds, is trying to hide it, but everyone can hear. Within 3 days, half your section is coughing. Within a week, you are too. It starts as a tickle in your throat. You ignore it. Everyone has a sore throat here. The cold air, the smoke, the constant shouting. Sore throats are normal. Then comes the fever. You're cold, you're always cold, but now you're cold and hot simultaneously. You're shivering but sweating. Your body can't decide if it's freezing or burning. Here's what's happening inside you. The influenza virus has entered your respiratory system and is replicating rapidly. Your immune system has launched a full response, raising your core temperature to fight the infection. Meanwhile, the external temperature is still 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Your body is trying to burn itself up while the environment is trying to freeze you. The combination is lethal. Listen to the dugout now. It's a chorus of coughing, wet and painful. Men are bringing up phlegm in colours that shouldn't exist in human bodies. Yellow, green, brown, sometimes with streaks of blood. Every cough sounds like lungs are being ripped apart. What makes influenza so dangerous in the trenches is the conditions. You're malnourished, exhausted, living in close quarters with poor hygiene. It's a perfect environment for disease transmission. One sick soldier can infect an entire platoon within days. Here's a historical fact that should terrify you. The 1918 influenza pandemic, which emerged in the final year of WWI, killed between 50 and 100 million people worldwide. That's more than the war itself killed. The trenches, with their crowded conditions, served as incubators for the virus. You're in the early stages now. The fever is high, probably 103 degrees. You're too hot inside your coat, but too cold without it. You've entered a state where comfort is impossible. Your muscles ache, not from exertion, but from the illness. Every movement hurts. Your bones feel like they're made of broken glass. You try to stand for watch, and your legs shake so badly you have to sit down. The medical officer makes his rounds. He takes one look at you and shakes his head. "Influenza," he says, like it's a death sentence. Which it might be. The treatment is rest, fluids, and warmth. 3 things you don't have access to in a frontline trench, so you're told to soldier on, keep your head down, try not to die. What actually happens is that you keep working, you stand your watch, you perform your duties, you function as best you can while your body fights a war on 2 fronts. External cold, internal infection. Some men don't make it. The combination of influenza and exposure is too much. They develop pneumonia. Their lungs fill with fluid. They drown slowly in their own bodies, coughing and gasping until they stop. You've seen 3 men die from flu in the past month. None of them were shot, none of them were shelled. They just got sick and couldn't recover in these conditions. Here's something medical historians note. The mortality rate from influenza in frontline trenches was significantly higher than in rear areas or civilian populations. The cold, malnutrition and stress made soldiers uniquely vulnerable. Their bodies had nothing left to fight with. You're coughing up blood now, not a lot, just flecks in your sputum, but it's there. Your lungs are being damaged by the infection. Each cough feels like someone stabbing you in the chest. You keep going. What else can you do? Admitting you're too sick to function feels like weakness. You'll tough it out. You'll beat this like you've beaten everything else. Days blur together. Fever dreams mix with reality. You're not sure if you're sleeping or hallucinating. You see things in the shadows, faces, figures. They're probably not real, but you're too sick to care. On day 5, the fever breaks. You wake up drenched in sweat, freezing cold, but clear-headed for the first time in days. The coughing continues, but it's better. You're going to survive. Not everyone does. 2 more men in your section die on day 6 and 7. Their bodies are carried out, wrapped in blankets, added to the casualty lists as died of disease. Their families will never know they died from the flu. The official records will just say they died in service. You recover slowly. It takes 2 weeks before you feel close to normal, or what passes for normal in a frozen trench. The cough persists for a month, but you're alive. You've survived another enemy. The war continues. Let's talk about the things living on and around you. You're not alone in your uniform. You're hosting an entire ecosystem of parasites, and they're all hungry. Lice. Body lice. Millions of them. They're in your clothes, in your hair, on your skin. They bite constantly, leaving red welts that itch like fire. The itching is maddening, constant, inescapable. You're scratching right now. You've been scratching for months. Your skin is raw from scratching. You've got infections from where you've scratched too hard and broken skin. But you can't stop because the itching never stops. Here's what lice are doing to you. They're feeding on your blood. Each louse takes multiple small blood meals per day. With thousands of lice on your body, you're being slowly exsanguinated by tiny parasites. You're being eaten alive in slow motion. The bites itch because your body is having an allergic reaction to louse saliva. The more you're bitten, the worse the reaction becomes. You're essentially becoming allergic to your own infestation. Listen to the sound of men dealing with lice, the scratch, scratch, scratch of fingernails on skin, the pop of lice being crushed between thumbnails, the cursing as another batch is discovered in seams. What soldiers developed was called chatting. That's sitting around picking lice out of clothing seams and crushing them. It's a social activity. Men chat while chatting, hence the name. You can spend hours doing this and barely make a dent in the population. Here's a historical fact. Body lice were responsible for spreading typhus on the Western Front. Typhus killed thousands of soldiers, and it was entirely preventable with better hygiene. But when you can't bathe, can't change clothes, and live in filth, prevention isn't possible. You're chatting now, running your thumbnail along the seam of your shirt. Pop, pop, pop. Each pop is a louse crushed. You'll kill 24 in this seam alone. Tomorrow there will be 24 more. It's Sisyphean, but it's something to do. Then there are the rats. We mentioned them before, but they deserve their own section. The rats are everywhere. In the trenches, in the debris, in your food supplies. On your body while you sleep. They're bold. They'll steal food from your hands. They'll run across your face at night. They'll bite if you try to chase them away. They're the true rulers of the trenches, and you're just visiting their kingdom. What makes rats particularly horrifying is what they eat. In a trench system littered with human remains, the rats have access to, well, let's just say they're very well fed and leave it at that. You've seen rats as big as small dogs. You've seen them swarm over a piece of dropped food like piranhas. You've woken up to find rats trying to chew through your boot to get at your foot. Some men have started hunting them, not for sport, for food. When rations run low, rat becomes emergency protein. You haven't tried it yet, but you're starting to see the appeal. Here's something that sounds like fiction but isn't. Some soldiers kept rats as pets. They'd tame a particularly smart one, keep it in their pocket, feed it scraps. The pet rats would apparently keep wild rats away, or maybe the soldiers just went slightly mad and needed a companion. Both explanations seem plausible. Beyond lice and rats, there are other parasites. Fleas, mites, worms. Your intestines probably host several species of parasites from drinking contaminated water. You've had diarrhea on and off for months. That's probably intestinal worms having a party in your digestive system. Your body is an ecosystem. Unfortunately, you're not at the top of the food chain in this ecosystem. You're in the middle, being fed upon by dozens of species while the cold tries to kill you from the outside. The worst part is that you've gotten used to it. The constant itching is background noise now. The rats are just annoying neighbours. The parasites are roommates you didn't ask for but can't evict. You've normalised hell. That's perhaps the most disturbing thing of all. Your hands are your primary tools. You need them for everything. Holding your rifle, eating, writing letters, literally every human activity. Now they're turning black. It started 2 weeks ago. Your fingers went numb during a watch. They had been numb before, but this time they didn't warm up afterward. Even after an hour in the dugout, even after holding them over a fire, they stayed numb. Now the tips of 3 fingers on your left hand are discoloured. Not black yet, but a dark purple that's heading toward black. The tissue is dying. You're watching parts of your body die while they're still attached. Here's what happened. The cold caused vasoconstriction. Your blood vessels clamped down to preserve core temperature, but they stayed clamped for too long. The tissue in your fingers, starved of blood and oxygen, began to die. Frostbite set in. The stages of frostbite are well documented. First, frostnip, reversible cold injury, skin turns white but recovers with warming. Second, superficial frostbite. Ice crystals form in skin, blisters appear. Tissue damage. Occurs but deeper structures are okay. Third, deep frostbite. All layers damaged. Tissue death. Likely amputation required. You're at stage 2 heading toward 3. The strange thing is that it doesn't hurt much. Dead tissue doesn't have nerve function. What you feel is a dull ache in your hand and complete numbness in the affected fingers. You can see them, you know they're there, but you can't feel them at all. You try to make a fist. 3 fingers don't respond. Your hand looks like a claw, some fingers curled, some straight and unmoving. It's deeply unsettling to see your body not respond to your commands. Here's a fact that doesn't help but is true. During WWI, thousands of soldiers lost fingers, toes and limbs to frostbite. The amputations weren't from enemy action but from environmental exposure. The winter was as effective at maiming soldiers as artillery. You're going to lose those fingers. You know it. The medical officer knows it. Everyone who's seen them knows it. But admitting it feels like giving up. You're trying home remedies. Some men say that rubbing snow on frostbite helps. It doesn't. That's a myth that kills tissue faster. Other men suggest gradually warming the affected area. That's actually correct, but you don't have the resources for gradual controlled warming. What you do is wrap your hand in bandages and try to keep it warm. You keep it inside your coat most of the time. You're essentially watching and waiting to see how much you'll lose. The psychological impact is heavy. Those are your fingers. You've had them your whole life. They've held pens, thrown balls, touched the faces of people you love. Now they're dead meat waiting to be cut off. You imagine your future. Will you be able to work? Will you be able to write? Will people stare at your maimed hand and pity you? The questions circle endlessly. Here's what some soldiers did. They deliberately exposed parts of their bodies to extreme cold, inflicting frostbite on themselves to get evacuated. It was called a self-inflicted wound, punishable by court-martial if discovered. But desperation made men consider it. You haven't done that. Your frostbite is genuine, earned through duty. But you can understand why some men would. 3 days later, the decision is made for you. The tissue has blackened completely. Gangrene is setting in. You're evacuated to a field hospital. The surgeon is efficient. We'll take the 3 fingers at the second knuckle, he says, like he's discussing carpentry. Local anaesthetic, a saw, some stitches. 20 minutes later, you have 7.5 fingers. The amputated digits are disposed of. Parts of your body are now medical waste. It's a surreal thought. You're sent to recover in Immersive England. Your war is over. You've been defeated by cold, not combat. You'll go home with a disability pension and a hand that makes people uncomfortable. But you're alive, and in this war that counts as winning. There's a phenomenon in women, the winter trenches that nobody warns you about. The silence. Not actual silence. There's always wind, always men moving, always distant sounds. but relative silence compared to summer. In summer, the war was loud. Artillery constantly, rifles cracking, men shouting. The soundscape was war, 24 hours a day. It was overwhelming but familiar. Winter is different. The snow muffles everything. Artillery sounds distant and muted. Men speak in whispers to conserve energy. The whole front line gets quieter, like the world is holding its breath, and the silence is worse than the noise. You're on watch now, staring across no man's land. Snow is falling gently. You can hear each flake landing. That's how quiet it is. The soft patter of snowflakes on the frozen ground is the loudest sound. Here's what happens in this silence. Your mind fills the void. You start hearing things that aren't there. Footsteps in the snow, voices whispering in German. The click of a rifle bolt being worked. You're certain someone is out there. You can hear them moving. You raise your rifle, peer into the darkness, finger on the trigger, ready to fire. Nothing. There's nothing there. The sounds were in your head, your brain trying to make sense of sensory deprivation mixed with hypervigilance. This happens constantly. Men firing at ghosts, men shouting warnings about attacks that aren't happening. The silence makes you paranoid, fills your head with phantom enemies. Listen to your own breathing. In this quiet, it sounds loud, laboured. You can hear your heartbeat in your ears. Your body is so loud in the silence that it's overwhelming. What you're experiencing is a psychological response to sensory deprivation combined with stress. Your brain, designed to process threats, invents threats when none are apparent. It's safer to hallucinate danger than to miss real danger. Here's a historical note. Medical officers reported increased rates of auditory hallucinations during winter months. Soldiers heard conversations, music, bells ringing. Some were diagnosed with shell shock. Others were simply experiencing the psychological effects of winter warfare. The silence also makes you think, and thinking is dangerous here. When there's constant noise and action, you don't have time to process what's happening. You react, you survive, you move on. But in the silence, you think. You think about home, you think about the men who've died, you think about the futility of this war stuck in frozen trenches fighting over yards of destroyed land. You think about whether you'll survive. The statistics aren't encouraging. You've been here 6 months. Half the men who arrived with you are dead or wounded. If the pattern continues, you've got maybe 6 more months before your number comes up. Morbid mathematics in the silence. What soldiers did to combat the silence was create noise. Singing, talking, telling stories. Anything to fill the void. Some units had unofficial bands. Men with harmonicas or makeshift instruments playing music in the dugouts. The music was usually terrible, off-key, discordant, barely recognisable. But it filled the silence, and that made it beautiful. You join in sometimes. You can't sing well, never could, but here nobody cares. The point isn't quality. The point is noise, human noise, proof that you're alive and together. Here's a fringe detail. Some soldiers reported hearing music that nobody was playing. Phantom orchestras, ghostly choirs. Some attributed this to spirits of the dead. More likely it was auditory hallucinations brought on by isolation and stress. But the explanations didn't matter. The music, real or imagined, provided comfort. The silence is breaking now. Dawn is coming, and with it the daily rituals resume. Men start moving, coughing, talking. The sounds of life return. You're relieved. The silence was becoming oppressive. You need noise, need proof that the world still exists beyond this frozen bubble. But night will come again, and with it, the silence, and you'll stand your watch hearing ghosts, fighting your own mind, surviving one quiet hour at a time. 3 months into winter, you're not sleeping well. Actually, you're barely sleeping at all. Maybe 2 hours a night, in broken fragments. Your body is running on fumes and desperation. And now you're seeing things. It starts small. Movement in your peripheral vision that vanishes when you look directly. Shadows that seem to shift and move. You chalk it up to tiredness and keep going. But it's getting worse. You're seeing people who aren't there. Men standing in the trench who disappear when you approach. Faces in the walls. Figures walking across no man's land in broad daylight that nobody else sees. You're hallucinating. Your brain, deprived of sleep, proper nutrition, and subjected to constant stress, is malfunctioning. Here's the scary part. The hallucinations feel completely real. You see a man standing next to you, clear as day, and you'll start talking to him before you realise he's not actually there. Your brain can't distinguish between real and false sensory input anymore. You're on watch, and there's a woman standing in no man's land. She's wearing a blue dress, completely out of place. She's beckoning to you, smiling. You know intellectually that this isn't real. Women don't wander around no man's land, but your eyes are telling you she's there, and the signal is so strong that your intellect is being overruled. You blink. She's still there. You rub your eyes. Still there. You're about to call out when she vanishes, simply ceases to exist between one moment and the next. Your heart is pounding. What the hell was that? Listen to your own thoughts. They're fragmented, jumping from topic to topic. You're having trouble maintaining a coherent train of thought. Your cognitive function is degrading from exhaustion and stress. What you're experiencing is similar to what researchers have replicated in sleep deprivation studies. After approximately 72 hours without sleep, subjects begin hallucinating. You've been getting minimal sleep for weeks. Your brain is crying out for rest by creating false realities. Here's a verified fact. Shell shock, later called PTSD, was partially caused by the conditions of trench warfare. But many symptoms attributed to shell shock were actually acute stress reactions combined with physical degradation. Hallucinations, paranoia, and emotional outbursts were common among exhausted, malnourished soldiers. Other men are experiencing similar things. One soldier insists there's a German listening post of Pupa directly under your trench. He can hear them talking, he says. Officers have investigated multiple times. There's nothing there. But he's adamant. Another man sees his dead brother walking the trenches. His brother died in 1915, but he's certain he's seen him, sticking to him. Medical officers label him as shell-shocked and send him to the rear. You're wondering if you should report your own hallucinations, but that would mean admitting you're not fit for duty. That might mean evacuation, or it might mean being shot for malingering. Hard to say. Safer to keep quiet and deal with phantom women in blue dresses on your own. The hallucinations evolve. Now you're hearing voices, clear conversations happening just out of sight. You'll round a corner expecting to find men talking, but there's nobody there. Sometimes the voices are in English, sometimes German, sometimes languages you don't recognize. Your brain is generating complex auditory hallucinations to fill the void. What's particularly disturbing is when the hallucinations are negative. You hear voices telling you you're going to die. You see corpses that sit up and look at you. You experience vivid flashes of your own death, so real you can feel the bullet entering your chest. These aren't dreams. You're awake. Your brain is just done with reality and has decided to improvise its own. Here's something that sounds insane but happened. Some soldiers developed shared hallucinations. 2 or more men would see the same thing that wasn't there. Collective hallucinations, possibly triggered by suggestion and shared stress. There are reports of entire units seeing angels or divine figures in the sky. The Angels of Mons became famous. Whether it was mass hallucination, propaganda, or genuine mystical experience is still debated. You don't see angels, you see mundane impossible things, a cat walking along the parapet, a child standing in the trench, your mother hanging laundry on barbed wire. Each vision lasts a few seconds to a few minutes before reality reasserts itself. You're learning to recognize them, to wait them out. Eventually your brain runs out of energy for the hallucination and it fades. You're functionally insane but still performing your duties. That's the reality of winter trench warfare. Most men are experiencing some degree of psychological break, but they're still fighting because there's no alternative. The war continues, the hallucinations continue. You learn to coexist with them, to function while your mind fractures. It's fine. Everything's fine. The woman in the blue dress is waving at you again. You've started scratching marks on the wall of your dugout. 1 mark per day. You're keeping track of time in a place where time has lost meaning. Today is day 147. 147 days in the trenches. 147 days of cold, fear, and slow degradation. You've done the math. If the war continues at its current pace, if your rotation schedule holds, you might be here for another 100 days, maybe more. The numbers are crushing. Here's what happens when you count days like this. Each one becomes a burden. You're not just surviving today, you're surviving today and thinking about the 99 todays that still lie ahead. It's psychologically exhausting. You're fighting not just to survive one day, but to maintain hope across an endless future of identical, terrible days. Listen to yourself breathe, one breath in, one breath out. You've been doing this for months, you'll do it for months more. Breathing is relentless, surviving is relentless. Some men don't count. They've learned to exist in an eternal present, not thinking about past or future, just enduring the now. They might be happier, or they might have broken differently than you. You can't stop counting. The marks on the wall have become compulsive. You add one every night before sleep. It's ritual, proof that you survived another day. What you're also counting is losses. 147 days. And you've seen 43 men from your original company killed or wounded. You're doing that math too. 43 out of 200 in 5 months. At this rate, the entire company will be casualties within a year. You don't know if you'll be replaced, or if the company will just shrink until it ceases to exist. Both options are depressing. Here's a historical fact. The average life expectancy of a British infantry soldier on the Western Front was highly variable depending on circumstances, but during major offensives it could be measured in weeks. Even during quiet periods, the constant attrition from snipers, disease and artillery meant units were constantly being worn down and rebuilt. You've started counting other things too. Rats killed, 23, lice crushed, impossible to count, thousands, hot meals, 12 in 5 months. Letters from home, 8. Men who've gone mad, 6. The numbers accumulate. They are how you make sense of chaos. If you can quantify the horror, maybe you can control it. Spoiler, you can't. Day 148. You add another mark to the wall. The tally is growing, a physical record of endurance. Other men have added marks too. The wall looks like a prisoner's cell from a movie covered in scratches that represent lives measured in daily survival. Some marks have names next to them. Those are memorials. Thompson made it to day 93. Davies made it to day 112. The wall is becoming a graveyard of numbers. You're trying not to think about what your final number will be. Will you make it to day 200? Day 300? Or will your mark be incomplete the days after your death left unmarked? The counting is making you morbid. But you can't stop. The marks are proof you existed, that this wasn't a fever dream, that you survived this frozen hell one day at a time. What you don't count anymore is days until you go home. That number is unknowable, possibly infinite. The war will end when it ends. Your service will end when it ends. Could be next month, could be never. Better to count what you can control, days survived. That number only goes up until it suddenly stops. You've survived another day. You add another mark. 149. The wall is running out of space. Ooh. You'll need to find a new wall soon. The counting continues. The war continues. You continue, one scratched line at a time. Here's a thought experiment. Would you rather be shot or freeze to death? Both are terrible options, but you're starting to have a preference, and that's deeply disturbing. A bullet is quick. If it hits somewhere vital, you're dead in seconds. Even a non-fatal wound gets you evacuated, possibly sent home. It's a clear, decisive event with immediate consequences. Freezing to death is slow. It takes hours, days, weeks of gradual decline. Your body breaks down piece by piece. You lose toes, fingers, functionality. Your mind degrades, and through it all, you remain conscious, aware of each loss. You've started to think that a clean bullet wound wouldn't be the worst thing. It's a terrible thought, one you're ashamed of, but it persists. Here's what you're experiencing. The winter is a constant grinding enemy that never relents. You can't shoot winter. You can't take cover from cold. It's always there, always attacking, always winning. At least with combat, you can fight back. You can shoot at Germans. You can feel like you're doing something, contributing, resisting. Against winter, you're helpless. Listen to yourself think. These are not the thoughts of a healthy mind. You're contemplating violence as preferable to cold. The war has rewired your brain in disturbing ways. What soldiers discovered was that different types of suffering hit differently. Acute suffering, a wound, a shell burst, was terrible but time-limited. Chronic suffering, cold, hunger, disease was relentless and degrading in ways that combat wasn't. Here's a fact from military records. During winter months on the Western Front, the ratio of disease casualties to combat casualties increased significantly. In some periods, Disease and environmental injuries outnumbered combat wounds 3-1. You're in a trench now, and shells are falling. Not on your position, but close enough to be concerning. Men are nervous, checking weapons, getting ready to repel an attack if one comes. You're feeling alive, alert, purposeful. The immediate danger of combat has snapped you out of the numb depression of winter. Adrenaline is pumping. You're ready to fight. The shells stop, no attack comes. You're almost disappointed. For 15 minutes you had a clear enemy and a clear purpose. Now it's back to cold, hunger, and waiting. What you're recognizing is that humans are better equipped to handle acute stress than chronic stress. Your body can dump adrenaline and handle immediate danger efficiently, but it's terrible at handling months of low-grade constant threat. Winter is chronic stress incarnate. It never ends, never peaks, never resolves. It just grinds on, wearing you down micron by micron. Some men actually volunteered for dangerous duties because the acute stress was preferable to the chronic misery. Scouting missions in no man's land, trench raids, anything that involved clear action and risk. You understand this now, you'd volunteer for a raid just to feel something other than cold and hopeless. Here's something officers noted. Winter didn't just increase physical casualties, it degraded combat effectiveness. Men who were excellent soldiers in summer became sluggish, reactive, and depressed in winter. The cold sapped not just warmth but motivation and willpower. You're comparing your fears now, being shot versus freezing, being gassed versus starving, drowning in mud versus dying of disease. It's a hierarchy of horrible ways to die, and you're ranking them like a macabre menu. The fact that you're doing this is evidence of how far you've fallen from normal human psychology. People shouldn't compare methods of death clinically, but here you are. What's your conclusion? If given the choice, you'd take a bullet over frostbite, combat over winter. The former kills you, the latter destroys you first, then kills you. There's a difference, but you don't get to choose. The war provides whatever suffering it wants, in whatever combination. Your preferences are irrelevant. You settle back into your frozen misery, envying the men who get wounded badly enough to go home, wondering if a self-inflicted wound would really be that bad, hating yourself for thinking it. The winter continues, the war continues, and you continue, comparing hells, surviving all of them. It's been quiet for 2 days. Too quiet. The Germans haven't shelled your section in 48 hours. There's been no sniper fire, no probing attacks, nothing. And it's making everyone nervous. You're waiting for the other shoe to drop because it always drops. Quiet periods mean the Germans are planning something, gathering forces, preparing a bombardment. The silence is more terrifying than noise, so when the first shell lands, there's a moment of relief before the terror sets in. At least, the waiting is over. The whistle of incoming artillery. You've learned to judge distance by sound. This one's close, maybe 50 yards. Everyone hits the deck, pressing against the trench wall, mouths open to equalize pressure. The explosion is massive, shaking the earth. Frozen dirt and shrapnel rain down. The smell of high explosives fills the air. Chemical and sharp, another shell, another. The barrage has started. The Germans are finally making their move. Here's the weird thing. You're terrified, absolutely, but you're also more present, more alive than you've been in days. The immediate danger has overridden the chronic misery. Your senses are sharp, your mind is clear. Listen to the shells. Each one has a different voice. The whistle of the approach, the crump of impact, the patter of debris falling. It's a symphony of death, and you've learned to conduct yourself to its rhythm. What you're experiencing is the same phenomenon as before. Acute stress is activating your fight or flight response. Adrenaline and cortisol are flooding your system. Your body is in survival mode, and ironically, survival mode is more tolerable than the slow degradation of winter misery. Here's a historical note. Some soldiers reported feeling more alive during combat than during quiet periods. The intensity of battle provided meaning and purpose that the endless waiting lacked. This psychological phenomenon contributed to the difficulty many veterans had adjusting to peacetime. The barrage continues. Shells are landing randomly, the Germans shooting blind, hoping to hit something. Most fall harmlessly in no man's land. Some hit the trench system, collapsing sections, burying men. You're moving now, following orders, helping to shore up a damaged section. There's purpose to your actions. You're not just enduring, you're doing. It feels good in a sick way. A shell lands directly on a dugout 50 yards down the line. The explosion is catastrophic. The dugout collapses completely. There were 6 men inside, the adrenaline high crashes. This is still hell. Combat isn't better than winter, it's just a different flavour of horror. But for a few minutes you felt useful. You felt like a soldier rather than a victim of weather. That's something. The barrage lasts an hour, then silence. The Germans have made their point, wasted ammunition, caused some casualties. No attack follows. It was just harassment fire. Everyone stands down, the tension releases. Men check themselves for wounds, account for friends, deal with the dead and injured. You realise you're not cold anymore. The exertion and adrenaline generated enough heat that for the first time in days you feel warm. It won't last. In 10 minutes the sweat will freeze and you'll be colder than before. But right now you're almost comfortable. What a surreal thing to be grateful for. Artillery bombardment warmed you up. Here's a dark truth about winter warfare. Some soldiers preferred combat seasons to quiet winters. At least during offensives, things were happening. You fought, you moved, you had purpose. Winter was just suffering without purpose, dying without glory. The shells stopped. The cold returns. You're back to the chronic misery, envying the brief interruption of terror. War is weird. Do you remember July? You do. Barely. It feels like it happened to a different person in a different life. You were hot then, miserably hot, sweating through your uniform, dying for shade and cool water. You complained constantly about the heat. Now you'd kill for hot, sit. You'd commit war crimes for one day of summer heat. Your past self who complained about being too warm seems like an ungrateful idiot. Here's what memory does in extreme conditions. It distorts. Your memories of summer have taken on a golden glow, like photographs that have been overexposed. Everything was better, warmer, easier. Was it really? Probably not. Summer had its own horrors. Disease, flies, decomposition, the smell. But your brain has edited those out, leaving only the warmth. You're sitting in the dugout, eyes closed, trying to remember what warmth feels like. The sun on your face, the pleasant weight of heat, sweat that evaporated instead of freezing. It's difficult. Your body has been cold for so long that warm has become abstract. You know intellectually that warmth exists, but you can't really feel it in your memory anymore. Listen to men talking, they're sharing summer stories. Remember when we could take off our coats? Remember when our socks dried? Remember when water was liquid? The memories are precious, hoarded like treasures. You're trying to hold on to proof that winter isn't permanent, that warmth exists somewhere in time, if not in space. What you're doing is maintaining hope. If summer existed before, it can exist again. This winter will end, spring will come, you just have to survive until then. Here's a fact about seasonal warfare. The Western Front went through annual cycles. Winter brought its own set of challenges, then spring brought mud and renewed offensives, summer brought heat and disease, autumn brought more mud. Veterans learned to dread each season for different reasons. You're mentally cataloguing the differences. Summer, hot, flies, disease, dry. Winter, cold, rats, frostbite, wet, neither is good. Both are survivable, barely. The golden memories of summer are fading as you sit there. Reality is intruding. Summer wasn't paradise, it was just a different hell. Possibly a slightly more tolerable hell, but still hell. Here's what you're learning. Humans adapt to suffer. You adapted to summer, you're adapting to winter. If you survive to next summer, you'll adapt again and you'll probably complain about the heat and remember winter as not that bad. Perspective is relative when everything is terrible. You open your eyes, you're still in a frozen dugout. Summer is months away, memory isn't going to warm you. You need to focus on survival, not nostalgia. But for a few minutes you were warm in your mind. And that's something. It's late March. You've survived 4 months of winter. 4 months of cold that tried to kill you every day. You're still alive, though parts of you aren't. You're missing 3 toes and 2 fingers to frostbite. Your lungs are scarred from pneumonia. Your mind is fractured from stress and hallucinations. But you're alive. And today, for the first time, the temperature is above freezing. 33 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 1 degree above the freezing point of water. In any other context, 33 degrees is cold. Here, now, it feels like summer. You're standing in the trench without your coat. Without your coat. You haven't done that in months. The air feels positively balmy on your skin. Around you, other men are doing the same thing. Removing layers, exposing skin to air, marvelling at the lack of immediate pain. Everyone is smiling. Actual genuine smiles. Listen to the sound of melting ice. Drip, drip, drip. All along the trench line, the frozen walls are weeping. Ice is turning to water. The transformation is slow but unmistakable. Here's what you notice first. You can breathe without pain. The air entering your lungs doesn't feel like knives anymore. Your breath isn't freezing into fog. Your nostrils aren't crusting with ice. Small miracles. What the thaw also brings is new problems. The frozen mud is melting, turning back into the liquid nightmare of autumn. The trenches are going to flood. All the solid ice that's been almost pleasant to walk on is becoming quicksand, but that's a problem for tomorrow. Today you're warm, relatively, by your new standards. Here's a historical note. Spring thaws on the Western Front were both celebrated and dreaded. They meant the end of winter suffering, but the return of mud and increased offensive operations. The war kicked back into high gear every spring. You're watching ice melt off the barbed wire. The wire had become encased in frost, thick white crust that looked almost beautiful. Now it's dripping, revealing the rusty metal underneath. No Man's Land is transforming. The snow is melting, and as it does, it's revealing what was hidden underneath. Shell holes become visible, debris emerges, and worse things. Things that were frozen and preserved are now thawing. You don't look too closely at those things. The first bird you've seen in months flies overhead. You watch it, transfixed. Birds exist, you'd forgotten. Living things that aren't rats or humans or lice. The bird is a reminder that the world outside the trenches still functions. What you're feeling is complicated. Relief that winter is ending. Dread about what comes next. Spring means offensive operations. Spring means your division will probably be ordered to attack. Spring means you've survived winter only to face bullets. But that's future worry. Present moment is warmish, and you're going to enjoy it. Here's something soldiers did when the thaw came. They stripped off their clothes and tried to wash. Actual washing with water that was liquid. The trenches would have sections of men naked, scrubbing filthy bodies with melted snow water. You're participating. You've peeled off your shirt for the first time in weeks. The smell is apocalyptic. Other men gag. You're used to your own stench, but even you're impressed by how bad it is. The water is ice cold but liquid. You splash it on your skin. 4 months of accumulated filth starts to wash away. It's not a bath. It's barely hygiene. But it's something. The lice are having a hard time with the temperature change. They're crawling more slowly, more visibly. You're picking them off by the dozen, crushing them, finally winning a battle against the parasites. What this moment represents is survival. You made it. Winter threw everything at you and you're still here. Damaged, traumatized, maimed, but alive. The thaw continues. By evening, the temperature is 40 degrees, positively tropical. You're almost sweating from your own body heat. Night falls. For the first time in months, you're not terrified of the night cold. It's cold, yes, but survivable cold, normal cold. You sleep better than you have in months. Still terrible sleep, but marginally less terrible. Winter is ending. You survived. Your company has been rotated to the rear. You're out of the frontline trenches for the first time since November. It's April now. 5 months have passed. The company assembles for roll call. You look around at the faces. So many are missing. 200 men entered winter together. 112 are standing here now. The rest are dead, wounded, or sick enough to be hospitalized. 44% casualties. And you didn't fight a single major battle. This was just winter. Here's what killed your friends. Trenchfoot, 18 men. Frostbite, 12 men. Pneumonia and influenza, 23 men. Artillery, 15 men. Snipers, 6 men. Other diseases, 8 men. Accidents and missy, 6 men. The breakdown is stark. 30 men from combat, 58 from cold and disease. Listen to the silence as the names are read. Each name that doesn't get a response is a ghost. Men you knew, spoke with, shared rations with. Gone. What you're processing is survivor's guilt. Why are you alive when Thompson isn't? When Davies isn't? When dozens of better men aren't? There's no answer. Survival was random. A combination of luck and genetics and chance. You didn't earn it. You just got it. Here's a fact that contextualizes this. The winter of 1916 to 1917 on the Western Front was one of the coldest on record. Casualty rates from non-combat causes exceeded combat casualties in many units. The British Army lost tens of thousands of men to winter without a shot being fired. Your commanding officer is speaking. He's praising the company's endurance, talking about duty and sacrifice. The words wash over us. You're not feeling proud, you're feeling numb. The survivors all look similar. Gaunt faces, hollow eyes, bodies that have lost 20 or 30 pounds. You're all walking wounded, even those without official injuries. You've aged a decade in 5 months. You're 23 years old, you look 40. What the war and winter have taken from you isn't just physical. It's mental, emotional, spiritual. You're not the person who entered these trenches. That person died somewhere in January. You're someone else now, someone colder and harder and more broken. The roll call ends, you're dismissed. Men scatter to assigned billets in the village. Real buildings with roofs and floors and walls, luxury beyond imagination. You're assigned a barn and you don't care. The barn is warm and dry, there was straw to sleep on. It's the finest accommodation you've had in months. Here's what happens next. You sleep. For 16 hours straight you sleep. Your body is finally in a safe enough environment to fully shut down and attempt repairs. When you wake, it's with nightmares. You're back in the frozen trench watching your toes turn black, feeling the cold seep into your bones. You wake gasping, disoriented, before realizing you're safe. Relatively safe. This is still a war zone. But you're not in the trenches. The company is given 2 weeks of rest, 2 weeks to recover from winter, to integrate replacements, to prepare for the spring offensives. You spend the time trying to remember what normal feels like. It's difficult. Normal is a foreign country you visited once in childhood and can barely remember. What you discover is that you don't fit into normal anymore. The villagers who still live here look at you like you're a ghost. The replacement soldiers who haven't seen winter combat yet seem like children. You exist in a liminal space between human and something else. Winter burned away parts of your humanity. You're not sure if they'll grow back. You're sitting in a farmhouse, a real farmhouse, with a fireplace that works. There's actual fire providing actual heat. It's almost overwhelming. You're thinking about what you've learned. The lessons winter taught you in the harshest classroom imaginable. Lesson 1. The human body is simultaneously incredibly resilient and fragile. You survived things that should have killed you, but you also lost body parts to nothing more dramatic than cold air. You're a paradox. Lesson 2. Comfort is relative. 33 degrees now feels warm. Hard bread now tastes delicious. Any sleep feels restful. Your baseline for acceptable conditions has shifted drastically downward. Lesson 3. The real war isn't always combat. The cold killed more men in your company than German bullets did. Winter killed Germans just as efficiently as it killed British. It was the only truly neutral force in this war. Listen to the fire crackle. The warmth on your face feels like a miracle, like something you don't deserve but are grateful for anyway. Lesson 4. Small things matter more than grand gestures. A dry sock saved more lives than heroic charges. A cup of hot tea did more for morale than patriotic speeches. The tiny daily victories against cold, hunger, and despair kept you alive, not bravery or duty. What you've realised is that the army prepared you for the wrong war. They trained you to fight Germans, but nobody trained you to fight winter. Nobody taught you how to keep your feet from rotting. Nobody explained that staying still could kill you faster than moving. You learned it all through trial and error, and the errors killed people. Here's a historical truth. Armies throughout history have struggled with winter warfare. Napoleon's Grande Armée was destroyed by Russian winter. Hitler's Wehrmacht suffered the same fate. The British Army in 1916 was just another group of men discovering that winter doesn't care about your training. Lesson 5. The mind breaks before the body. You could force your body to keep functioning long after it wanted to quit. But your mind started fracturing months ago. The hallucinations, the paranoia, the depression, those were your brain waving a white flag. Physical toughness didn't predict survival. The biggest, strongest men died just as often as the small ones. But men who maintained mental routines, who found small purposes, who kept some spark of humanity alive, they tended to survive more often. Lesson 6. You're capable of enduring things you never imagined possible. 5 months ago, you'd have said surviving this was impossible, but you did. You're sitting here, maimed but alive, proof that humans can endure almost anything if they have no choice. That's not inspiring, that's terrifying. Your capacity for suffering is far greater than you ever wanted to know. Here's what soldiers discovered. Humans adapt. Put us in hell and we'll create routines, find meaning, develop coping mechanisms. We're horrifyingly good at normalizing the abnormal. You normalized frozen feet, eating food harder than wood, hallucinations and death. The fact that you adapted doesn't make you strong. It makes you human. Humans are adaptation machines. Lesson 7. War isn't glorious. There's nothing noble about slowly freezing to death in a trench. Nothing heroic about losing toes to frostbite. Nothing admirable about shooting at men you've never met because someone told you to. War is bureaucratic suffering punctuated by moments of terror. The movies lie, the recruitment posters lie. Anyone who calls war glorious has never spent a winter in the trenches. What you'll tell people when you get home is carefully edited truth. The real stories, the hallucinations, the rot, the rats, the way you contemplated self-inflicted wounds, those stories stay locked inside. Nobody wants to hear them anyway. Here's something historians note. WWI veterans rarely talked about their experiences. The silence wasn't about repression. It was about protection. Protecting loved ones from knowledge they couldn't handle. Lesson 8. You're not the same person anymore. The you that existed in October is dead. Winter killed him. You're someone new, someone cold and hard and broken in specific ways. You understand that survival isn't noble. You understand that most people die stupidly, randomly, without meaning. The old you believed in God, country, duty, honour. The new you believes in staying warm and staying alive. Everything else is negotiable. You're staring at the fire thinking about the 100+ men who won't see this. They're frozen in mud somewhere or buried in mass graves. Lesson 9. Survival is random. It's not about skill or strength or virtue. It's about being in one spot instead of another when the shell lands. It's about pure stupid chance. You survived winter. It means nothing except that you're here and others aren't. The fire pops, sending sparks up the chimney. Like the men you knew. Here briefly, then gone. You've learned what winter wanted to teach you. You're not sure the knowledge was worth the price. It's May now, 60 degrees, flowers blooming. Spring has arrived, but you're not happy, you're just numb. Here's what nobody warned you about. Surviving trauma doesn't mean recovering from trauma. Your body made it through winter. Your mind is still frozen in January. You're sitting outside, sun shining, and you feel nothing. The warmth doesn't touch the cold inside you. That cold is permanent now, a psychological winter that doesn't end. What you're experiencing won't be called PTSD for decades yet. Right now, medical officers call it shell shock or weakness. They don't understand that your mind was injured as surely as your body. You're having nightmares every night. The same dream. You're back in the frozen trench, feet rotting, trying to get warm but can't. You wake panicking, checking your feet obsessively. During the day, sounds trigger you. A door slamming sounds like artillery. You drop to the ground reflexively, then feel stupid when you realise there's no danger. Your body learned to react to threats and hasn't unlearned. You're stuck in survival mode even though survival isn't currently necessary. What you've lost is the ability to relax. There's constant tension, vigilance that never turns off. You're always scanning for threats, always ready to react. The replacement soldiers look at you veterans with confusion and fear. You're ghosts who haven't realised they're dead yet. You're dealing with survivor's guilt that won't quit. Why are you here when Thompson isn't? Nothing. You were lucky. He was unlucky. The army's solution is sending you back to the trenches. You've had a month of rest. There's a war to fight. The thought of going back doesn't scare you. Nothing scares you anymore. You're already dead inside. Spring taught you that surviving isn't the same as living. You survived winter. But you're not living. That part died in the cold and your feet hurt. It's 65 degrees, you're wearing dry socks, and your feet hurt like you're back in frozen trenches. Phantom pain, your brain remembering pain that's no longer happening. You're limping. You'll always limp. The frostbite took toes, And losing toes changes how you walk. You're permanently marked by the winter. Your lungs are scarred from pneumonia. You can't take deep breaths without coughing. Your hands don't work right. 2 missing fingers mean you can't grip things properly. Your teeth are loose from malnutrition. Your hearing is damaged from artillery. Your digestion is wrecked. You're cataloguing the physical price of survival. Each symptom is a memento from winter's attempt to kill you. You catch your reflection, hollow-eyed, sunken-cheeked, old. That's what winter made you. You'll never be comfortable in winter again. For the rest of your life, cold will trigger panic. Your body won't let you forget what cold can do. The body remembers. Always. You've received a letter from home. Your mother writes cheerfully, asks when you're coming home, asks if you're keeping warm. You can't answer honestly. How do you explain winter trenches to someone whose biggest concern is the vicar's new wife? So you'll write back, "I'm fine. The war is hard, but we're doing our duty." Lies that protect her from truth she doesn't need to carry. What soldiers discovered is that civilians couldn't comprehend trench warfare. The experiences were too far outside normal. Trying to explain just made you sound insane. Better to lie. Better to keep the horror locked inside where it can't hurt anyone except you. You imagine going home, someone asks what the war was like. What do you say? You'll say it was difficult, but we managed. And they'll nod and feel they understand, even though they've understood nothing. The real stories stay locked in your head. What you can't explain is the transformation. You're not their son anymore. You're someone else wearing his body. Winter killed their son and replaced him with this cold, damaged stranger. You'll go home eventually if you survive. You'll sit in familiar rooms that feel alien. You'll perform normalcy while screaming inside. The person they're waiting for isn't coming back. He died in a frozen trench in January. Let's look at statistics. Numbers can't capture suffering, but they outline its scope. Winter 1916 to 1917, Western Front. British forces alone, 74,000 non-combat casualties. Germans, 60 to 80,000. French, over 50,000, roughly 200,000 casualties from winter in a single season. More than died in some entire wars. The Battle of Waterloo killed 47,000 total. Winter killed 4 times that many, and it barely makes history books. Each number is a person, a son, brother, father. Each had a name, dreams, fears. They died of cold, or trench foot, or flu. Unglamorous, unremembered deaths that don't get monuments. Trench foot, 22,000 British cases. Frostbite, 15,000 severe cases. Respiratory illnesses, 37,000 hospitalizations, 20% death rate. What historians note, these are underestimates. Record keeping was poor. The true number might exceed 300,000. Average weight loss per soldier, 25 to 35 pounds. 20% of body mass. Mass starvation from cold requiring more calories than rations provided. Your unit lost 44%, right in the expected range. Statistically typical suffering. History remembers battles. It forgets the slow grinding horror of just existing in winter trenches. You're one of the lucky statistics. Wounded but survived. A number in the recovered and returned to duty column. Your suffering gets tallied, categorised and forgotten. Let's talk money. Cost to train a British soldier, £50. Equipment, £30. £80 total investment. Multiply by 74,000 casualties. £5.92 million are lost to cold. In 2025 terms, £400 million sterling, $500 million. Human suffering becomes accounting. Death becomes lost investment. Cost of preventive measures, £1 million. Cost of actual casualties, £6 million. Preventing winter casualties would have saved £5 million, but they didn't invest in prevention. Cheaper to accept casualties and replace them than to fundamentally change the system. Cost of quality waterproof boots, under £4 per soldier, would have reduced casualties by 30%, but the boots weren't produced. You represent an economic loss. Your missing toes are quantifiable decreases in productive capacity. Your suffering measured in pounds and pence. Battle of the Somme, 1 million casualties. Extensively documented, memorialised. Winter 1916 to 1917, 200 to 300,000 environmental casualties. Mentioned in histories, the Christmas truce of 1914 is famous. Movies, songs, poems, Winter 1916 to 1917 gets maybe a paragraph in comprehensive histories. We remember moments of humanity. We forget months of grinding suffering. History is selective. It remembers what fits existing narratives about war. Your experience doesn't fit, so it gets forgotten. The Western Front produced famous war poetry, but very little captured winter's horror. Frozen toes aren't poetic. Combat has imagery potential. Cold is just cold. Future people will remember. Trenches, gas, Somme, the lost generation. They won't remember you standing watch in frozen trenches, losing toes, watching men die of cold. Your suffering will be statistically noted, but experientially forgotten. The battles get monuments. Winter gets footnotes. What could have prevented winter from being such slaughter? Almost everything. Better boots. The technology existed. Mountaineers had them. But soldiers got cheap boots that fell apart. Proper winter rations. Higher. Calories. More fat and protein. Adding 20% more food would have saved tens of thousands. Better trench design. The Germans proved it was possible. Elevated positions, proper drainage, heating, more frequent rotations every 2 weeks instead of months. None of these solutions were impossible. They were all available, some were proven effective in trials, but they weren't scaled up. Weren't prioritised, you and 200,000 others suffered unnecessarily, because institutions moved slowly and valued efficiency over human welfare. This wasn't unavoidable suffering. This was chosen suffering, the result of institutional incompetence and indifference. Your missing toes are evidence of failure, not yours, but the system's. There's a group who understand without explanation. The other survivors, you can identify them instantly. The way they move, the way they react, the way they go quiet when civilians complain about minor discomforts. You share something that transcends normal friendship. You survive the same hell, no words necessary, a nod of recognition. Both know, both remember, both carry the same weight. It's shared damage, mutual recognition of suffering that changed you at cellular level. What you have is a terrible shared language. Remember that January wind? Full sentence. Complete meaning to those who were there. This brotherhood provides validation. Your experience was real. You're not broken uniquely. You're damaged in company. The men who survived winter with you are the closest thing to family now. Bound by shared trauma. Extreme experience creates categories. People who were in winter trenches. People who weren't. The gap is permanent. You exist primarily in company of other damaged men. Not healthy probably, but necessary. The brotherhood isn't about friendship. It's about bearing witness to each other's suffering. Confirming it was real, horrible, and you survived it together. You're on watch again. Warm May night, stars visible, no snow. But you're thinking about winter. The men who won't see this night. Thompson, Davis, Anderson, they should be here. But they're not, and you are, and it makes no sense. Survival is morally neutral. It doesn't mean you were better. It means you were lucky. That's all. Listen to the night. Quiet. Peaceful. Hard to believe men froze to death here months ago. You've survived winter, but there's still war. Tomorrow you might get shot. Surviving one hell doesn't grant immunity from others. Here's your calculation. If the war lasts another year, your survival chances are maybe 30%. Winter didn't kill you. Something else probably will. You're weirdly okay with that. You made peace with dying in January. Everything since has been borrowed time. What you hope for is that your death is quick. Not like winter's slow horror. A bullet, fast, done. The stars wheel overhead. Indifferent to human suffering. You're cosmically insignificant. Your suffering meant nothing to the universe. You're a brief arrangement of atoms that will soon rearrange. That thought is oddly comforting. Winter tried to kill you and failed. That's your victory, small and pyrrhic, but real. You're still here, still breathing, still watching, still surviving. The eastern sky lightens, dawn coming, your watch nearly over. The sun rises, gold and pink touching devastated landscape, making it almost beautiful. You survived winter, you survived the night. You'll survive today or you won't. That's enough. That has to be enough. Your watch ends. You head to the dugout to sleep. Behind you the sun rises on a world that tried to freeze you to death and failed. You're still here, damaged, traumatized but alive. That's your story. Not heroic, not glorious, just survival. It'll have to be enough. If you're still listening, you've made it through this journey. Through frozen trenches, through suffering, through winter that killed more efficiently than bullets. This wasn't entertainment. This was bearing witness. The men who endured winter trench warfare rarely told their stories. Most took their experiences to their graves. The horror was too much to share, but someone should remember. Wars aren't just battles. They're also slow grinding suffering that breaks men without glory or recognition. Winter 1916 to 1917 killed hundreds of thousands without making headlines. It maimed countless more. It scarred survivors psychologically forever, and history barely remembers. So tonight, as you drift off, maybe spare a thought for those men. The ones who stood watch in freezing trenches, who lost toes to frostbite, who died of cold while serving their countries. They deserve to be remembered, even if their suffering wasn't photogenic enough for history books. You've survived this story. They survived the reality. Some of them anyway. The ones who didn't are frozen in time, in mass graves. Young men who died unglamorous deaths far from home. Remember them, not as heroes, not as victims, just as humans who suffered and endured and sometimes survived. That's their memorial, your memory. Sleep well, you've earned it. They rarely did.